Then, of course, there's the obvious question, is street art vandalism? And this is a bit of an issue. I mean, ultimately, are we looking at something that is art in the postmodern world? Are we looking at something that is art to enough people that it suddenly gets considered art to everyone or to society in general? And there's certain pieces that we can agree, for example, are art. Now, this is what we tend to think of when we think of street art. And this is where people go when they're trying to prove that street art is vandalism. You look at buildings like this covered in tags and posters and stickers and everything else, and they say, look, this is street art. This is clearly vandalism. But they're, of course, arguing from one end of the spectrum. What's something more average? Well, what about something like this, where they get rid of part of the word and then they stencil in the figure of the little girl? Is this vandalism? Well, it kind of depends who you are. If you park in that lot and you come across it and it makes you smile, maybe it's art. But if you own the parking lot, if you own that wall, is it still art? Or are you going to look at it and go, oh no, someone just defaced my sign because it's my sign? Ownership suddenly changes the equation. So how do we look at it? Could you actually argue that it's all about ownership or all about your relationship, and it's entirely postmodern and subjective, and what is one person's art can be another person's vandalism, and that's perfectly acceptable. And maybe that's the case, but there are times where we need to agree. There are times where we look at something and we say, hey, we need to agree. Is this or is this not graffiti? Is this or is this not vandalism? Now, a piece by Banksy, for example, we would all generally agree is definitely art. That's because of who created it, not because of its skill level. So, I guess what I'm trying to get at is this is a big, muddy area. This is the sort of area that comes down to a personal decision on a case-by-case basis. We all become the judge in this case, especially in a postmodern view. We look at it, and what to me might be art, to you might be horrific vandalism and something that needs to be destroyed and gotten rid of. And the artists, by the way, generally create these works with the understanding that they will be destroyed, covered over, or otherwise removed. After all, that's what they're creating. They're creating something which is graffiti, which is temporary by its very nature. So, big muddy area, great one to jump into further, not one I'm going to jump into further right now because there's so many little arguments to deal with if you're trying to deal with this issue.